Went into high school and went completely off the rails. Suspended multiple times, got in with the wrong crowd. Was probably the only Indian brown person in the area that I was brought up in. I ended up leaving school. My first job was an apprenticeship. I think it was about 70 quid a week. I know I've got no experience, but would you consider giving me a shot? Nobody in our family had ever had a company car and wore a suit. Over a 7-year period at my age, I became the top performer at every single level. You know, in my mid-20s, I was the highest earner, earning over six figures. For me personally, I think a founder of a business has to be able to sell.
Imposter syndrome, something, your drive and determination got you through that.
Nearly everyone I spoke to that were my peers were like, don't go down the private equity route.
When 5 or 6 years old, to be where you are now. I mean, reflecting on that yourself, what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel a sense of pride?
I've always had the ability to visualise where I want to be and what that would look like and how that experience would feel.
Is there anything you would share that would be sort of your uncommon sense for business owners?
I think the whole, and it's probably underestimated, but
Hello and welcome to this episode of Uncommon Sense. I'm really, really pleased to say that today we're joined by Dez Derry. Dez is the founder and CEO at Blume, which is a customer acquisition specialist for the legal sector. Dez, it is going to be a fantastic guest, I'm sure. Dez is currently a finalist in the EY Northwest Entrepreneur of the Year Awards 2023. So a little bit about Blume. Blume currently employs over 100 people and it has tripled in terms of people and revenue in the last 3 years. So it's a really fantastic story. For me personally, this is great because I knew Dez years and years and years ago, sort of right at the start of your journey. And so I'm just so pleased to see how far you've come and how successful the business has been and how successful you've been since. So I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome, Dez. Welcome along to Uncommon Sense. What I'd like to start with, please, if we can, is just really to understand your story and your career to date and really how you ended up at Blume.
Sounds good. So I think with most entrepreneurs and founders, there's normally some history. And I think with me, I had a tough start in life. I was abused as a child. I was then in and out of foster care. Didn't go to school and got quite lucky at the age of 8 where I was fostered and then adopted. And that then gave me a platform because the family who took me on and 2 of my younger brothers gave us stability. Working class family, gave us stability, got me back into education and just showed me sort of affection, love, a really strong work ethic. But the interesting bit about that is we were the first Indian family adopted by a white family in the UK. So I had a significant culture shift. So my biological parents were Sikh, and my dad passed away and my mum really poorly. And I went from, simple things like being a vegetarian to moving in with some very traditional white Sunday roast every Sunday. So it was a real shift, but it was probably the luckiest moment in my life because I wouldn't be here today if they hadn't taken us on. They've already got 2 of their own children, my brother and sister. They took on 3 boys. So, owe them a lot. And, as personally, my business drive, part of that is just to say thank you to them as well because they sacrificed everything, brought up 5 kids, council estate, the normal stories that you can hear with entrepreneurs where it's not a great beginning. Mm-hmm. So from there, I sort of got that stability and, family foundation score. Went into high school and went completely off the rails. Suspended multiple times, got in with the wrong crowd. I think one thing to highlight was I was probably the only Indian brown person in the area that I was brought up in called Burnswood in Midlands. And I still sort of have, images of the National Front walking past on a Sunday night. So I suppose my defence, I got in with the wrong crowd, and I got in with the wrong crowd partly because it was a level of protection from everything else that was going on. And I didn't do very well at school. I really struggled. Left school with 2 C's, 4 D's, an E and an F. And my sort of family who brought me up no one's ever been to university. And my parents, my dad worked in a concrete factory, and it was just, you're going to get a job. And as soon as you get a job at 16, you're going to be paying board. And my first job, I was on 50 quid a week, and half of that, £25 a week, went to my parents for board. But as I say, it was that work ethic that sort of, I think has really propelled me where I am now.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. It really is. I didn't know that, so that's an amazing story. And it's interesting, isn't it, when we talk about drive and motivation and where do entrepreneurs get it from? And it's clear that your start was a major factor in your drive to succeed in business. So another thing that strikes me, and I'm interested to get your view on this, is we were speaking to someone a few weeks ago, another younger entrepreneur who's been successful. And interestingly, he was talking about how he didn't have that sort of level of success, if you like, at school. He didn't thrive at school, and he didn't conform to what was expected and all that kind of stuff. And yet he's gone on to be a very successful entrepreneur himself. Do you feel that, so for anybody listening who perhaps is a younger, aspiring entrepreneur who might find themselves in that situation, what would your advice be for them?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't academic, and but I always had drive and ambition. And I think what school doesn't teach you is there are other options. And I'm sort of 41 now, but when I was at school, you were very lucky if you had the opportunity to become a solicitor, doctor, teacher. None of the people I know who I went to school with did any of those. A lot of people have got white collar jobs, some got blue collar jobs. But I think if you are young and you are struggling with school, there are other options. And I think what the education system doesn't necessarily talk about or teach, you didn't in my day, was entrepreneurship and setting up a business, running a business, the compliance that goes with the business. And I think today you think of the different ways you can set up a company out of your bedroom. There's endless opportunities, and you've got people now monetizing social media channels. So I think, if you are struggling with school, try and work harder at it, because it always gives you a foundation and a plan B. But business opportunity, there's so many now, and you can set something up with very little funding or any funding whatsoever, especially with online businesses as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. So after your start then you sort of left school and you thought, what now? You say you got yourself a job and you were paying board, and then what happened?
So during my sort of last, I think, year or two at school, and I don't know if they still do it now, you're sort of forced to do work experience.
Yeah.
And I remember in Burntwood, where I'm from, walking around the industrial estates, just knocking on factories and saying, I need some work experience. Will somebody take me on? And there's a company called Atlas Hydraulic Loaders, and they said, yeah, we'll take you on. So I ended up working for this plants machinery sort of manufacturer, distributor. They used to put cranes on the back of trucks, and they had like mini excavators. So I was there for a week, and that week really was me sweeping the floors and making drinks for everybody else. But during that week, got on really well with the managing director there, and I said, look, when I leave school, I've got to get a job. My parents are like, you've got to get a job straight away. Is there any chance you give me an opportunity, and would you provide any level of sort of training as well, so I can get some skills and some qualifications? So I ended up leaving school. My first job was an apprenticeship. I think it was about 70 quid a week. And with that apprenticeship, they let me go to college. And basically I was learning about plant and hydraulic machinery. However, if you ask my partner or any of my friends, I've got the least practical skills in the world. I can't even put up a picture. So working on heavy machinery was not for me. And I sort of stuck that for about a couple of years. I went to college, didn't really, do particularly well with that. And then from there, I bounced around. I had factory jobs, retail jobs. And I think another job that I took on that gave me a lot of grounding and resilience was working for Stay Bright Windows, door knocking, selling double glazing, which is the toughest job when literally people are slamming doors in your face. And then from there, I went to work in a warehouse where I was picking and packing parcels, which were hair and beauty products, a company called Grafton International. And I suppose I'll come back to this afterwards, but I'm in this warehouse at the age of 18, 19, and all I'm seeing every morning is people walking past in suits, and those people in suits are going upstairs. And I sort of had a bit of vision and a bit of a dream, just thinking one day, I hope I can be that person that walks past in a suit, walks up the stairs. And the only way I would do that was to try and get an opportunity in the sales team, selling hair and beauty products to salons and wholesalers. And thankfully, the person who managed the sales team, a lady called Sarah North, she was a chain smoker, which meant that she'd be coming down those stairs, through the warehouse, through the double doors, stood outside 20 times a day, chain smoking. And I plucked up the courage and I went to her one day and said, look, Sarah, you know, I'm in the warehouse. I know people from the warehouse have never gone into sales within Grafton's. I know I've got no experience, but would you consider giving me a shot? I think I could do it if you give me a really good training. I'm really ambitious. And at the time, I thought I was getting some lip service. She said, yeah, of course, if any jobs come up, we'll let you have an interview. Anyway, weeks passed, months passed, and then somebody did hand their notice in with the lowest tier of sales at Grafton, selling nail varnish into wholesalers. Yolanda, her name was, lovely girl. And anyway, Sarah said, look, you know, there's a job that's come up. We're interviewing people within the business, external, internal, and we'll let you come for an interview. And obviously, you know, I was absolutely made up. I was getting that opportunity. The people in the warehouse were quite sort of derogatory about it, saying, you know, they're never going to have you. You know, you belong with us. And it was a bit of them and us. So I sort of ignored that. And I booked a day's annual leave, went out and brought a suit, had my moment walking through the warehouse with the suit on, went for the interview. I have no idea what I said, but I think what came through really strong was passion, drive, and that determination to just sort of change my life, really. And I'll never forgive Sarah because she gave me the shot. And you know, I got a company car at the age of 20. It was the most battered company car that they had, and I'm running around the country with my A to Z's in the boot, stopping every 5 minutes, trying to figure out where to go. There wasn't Google Maps, and sat navs in those days. Yeah. And within 6 months, a team of 30, I was number one, and with no sort of real product training, just passion, desire, and that sort of vision of changing my life. And that just, I was there for 2 years consistently, the top performer. But it wasn't enough. I was like, I had bigger dreams. I want to, really change my life, make my parents proud. And they were really proud of them because, nobody in our family had ever had a company car and wore a suit. That was my background. So I remember seeing an advert. There was a publication called The Grocer, which was a magazine where, businesses would advertise, corporates, retail organisations, because again, you didn't have Indeed and everything else then. And there was a massive A4 advert for Yellow Pages. And Yellow Pages was owned by the Yale Group. It was a FTSE 100 business. And, at that time, there was sort of north of 2 billion turnover, 800 million a year EBITDA profit. And it had the biggest face-to-face sales force in the UK across all sectors. And, I was the top 4 performer at Grafton's, earning the most commission, but I was only like 20 to 24 grand a year. And Yale, the entry-level salesperson, was 36,000 basic a year, any car that you want, and on unlimited commission opportunity. And I'm 21 at this time, so to me that was like footballers' wages. And I went for it, and I probably could say this now. Hopefully, no one will come after me. But even the application process, I had to lie about my GCSEs because unless you had a minimum level of GCSE, they wouldn't even screen you, have a telephone consultation. So I remember fudging my GCSEs a little bit, which got me a telephone interview. The telephone interview then over a 6-month period, I had 4 interviews with different people. And what I got, apart from the last one, was you're too young, you've got no commercial awareness, and, yes, you've done well selling nail varnish, you're coming to work for a FTSE 100 company with the biggest face-to-face sales force in the UK, and we only take on the best. So back then, Yellow Pages was like Google is today, and it was, the elite, the best of the best. I think the same thing happened. I think the final interview, Diane Levitt, who was in each of the interviews as well and bringing in her managers, I said, look, you say you're so good, your training's so good, well, why aren't you giving me a chance? Because surely if your training's so good, you're telling me that I've got some of the sort of the ability to do it, surely I should fly. And I don't know what happened, but I got a call afterwards, says, yeah, we're going to give you a chance. Again, bottom of the ladder, we'll give you the training. You're the youngest person we've ever taken on. And I remember turning up to the training down in London, and I was surrounded with advertising salespeople, people who've come over from Phones for You, and the egos and the experience was difficult. And I was like, do you know what? I am actually going to sink in. I'm completely out of my depth. And, you know, took on the training on board. Again, the same drive, passion, resilience. First one in the office, last one out. They had me running around North Wales trying to sell advertising to, you know, people that had only been in the Yellow Pages for 1 year, so plumbers, builders, tradespeople who just thought you were a necessary evil and wouldn't turn up to meetings. So it was a really, really tough job. But within 6 to 9 months, promoted. And then just to accelerate that, over a 7-year period, at my age, I became the top performer at every single level, to a point where, you know, in my mid-20s, I was the highest earner, earning over six figures, winning all the awards, won a gold award where they flew me and my partner out to La Manga in Spain. And I had a phenomenal career, absolutely phenomenal career. So it was again, you know, you talk about luck and opportunities in life. That then took me on to the next stage. While I was at Yale, dealing with business owners, it started the desire then about, do you know, I wonder if I could build my own business. And I found myself in the last few years when I was looking after Yale's bigger advertisers, spending, you know, north of £250,000 a year. And I was dealing with decision makers then with bigger businesses, because the advertising spend was bigger, so they would see me and I did get some respect from them. But I'd just be asking the same questions, you know, how did you start? What were the challenges? You know, what would you recommend to anyone who was looking to set up a business? And I'm just absorbing, asking questions. And then I'm thinking, do you know what? I need to sort of, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it before I'm 30, as in leave. And also, where is the opportunity? And at that time, Yale and Yellow Pages was in decline because Google had come along. Yale refused to sell to Google. And the words of the CEO back then was, you know, we'll never sell to those internet geeks. And Yellow Pages was in demise. And I'm going out seeing the customer base, and they're saying, look, the number of inquiries that we've relied on for all these years is in decline. We want to do more on the internet. We don't know what to do because we've only ever had Yellow Pages. So I then invested and did a diploma in digital marketing to get a qualification and understand the fundamentals of digital marketing. Obviously, it changes, evolves all the time. And then I became the ambassador and the lead within Yale for Yale.com, which was their online offering. And, you know, a company that was employing thousands, I became the Yale.com specialist in the UK. But that gave me a bit of confidence and a bit of a springboard to go, do you know what? I can go out and service these SMEs and get them online by helping them with digital marketing, websites, videos, SEO. And you'll remember me having this conversation.
It. Yeah, I'm sat here thinking
10 years ago.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm sat here thinking
we've had this conversation.
This is it, yeah.
So anyway, I left Yale in May 2011 and I formed my first business. And that first business was called My Marketing Aid. And the logo was done on a sofa, fag packet, me and my partner. The name was, and I was the first business, I was a marketing consultant going out to SMEs across all sectors, transitioning them from traditional advertising like print and radio and getting them online. And that went quite well. I mean, I was in the first sort of 9 months, I was turning over hundreds of thousands, making more money than what I was making at Yale because I had no overheads, I was just working from home. But the problem was, I was sort of outsourcing then all the website design development, the video content production, you'll remember all this, to subcontractors. Some are good, some are not so good. Some are reliable, some are not so reliable. So I thought, you know what, I need to bring this in-house. But then you sort of become a very different business. So I formed then my second business, which was MMA Digital, which was a digital marketing agency. So really what I did, I pivoted my marketing aid to MMA Digital, marketing consultant to a digital marketing agency. And at that time, I'm in Manchester. And that's what, 2012, if I think back. And there was a lot of digital marketing agencies then within Manchester. And I'm like, how the bloody hell am I going to compete with these guys? I'm very late to the party. But what I did see is those agencies didn't really focus on a particular niche and put all their effort into a particular niche. They were working with lots of sectors. And not many of those agencies wanted to particularly work with law firms or professional services business like accountancy firms. So at that time, I had some experience working with law firms with Yale and then also as my consultancy business. So I thought, you know what, bugger it. If I can't be the biggest digital agency in Manchester, I can certainly aim and have a goal the biggest digital marketing agency within a niche, and I chose the legal sector. The legal sector. So anyway, fast forward over a 5-year period, MMA Digital went on to become the go-to digital marketing agency for law firms. And we designed and we built websites. We produced a huge amount of video content. We were producing video content for you guys. And we ran SEO, PPC, and social media campaigns. And across that period, we won multiple awards. I spoke at multiple events to the legal sector with lots of partners like the banks, like NatWest. Built a really good profile. And we worked with about a third of the top 200 law firms in the UK, which was great. The problem with a digital marketing agency, which is project-based, is the revenue is quite lumpy. And as I scale the business up, you sell a website, you get a deposit, but law firms can take a long time to make a decision. Lots of people in that decision-making process. So a project that should take 6 to 12 weeks can then take 6 to 12 months, and you're not able to invoice until the project's done. So personally, it was relentless. I'm running around the country, chasing deposits, trying to finish work, trying to get the team to finish work. And I built it to £1 million turnover, circa 200,000-300,000 a year EBITDA profit, which is great, which was, I was earning good money, but it wasn't really going to take me to where I really wanted to be.
Not really scalable either, is that what you were thinking?
Wasn't that scalable, and we were the market leader. It was £1 million turnover business, making a few $100,000 a year profit. So, but one thing that did happen over that 7-year period in the legal market, I became the go-to specialist for digital marketing. Lots of respect in the industry, and I saw an opportunity to flip the model and start again. I did pretty much start again, working with some of those existing relationships that I had, and I pivoted MMA Digital to, instead of selling websites for other people, let's build our own websites. Let's build some really clever technology. Let's generate leads online using my skills and team that I could build around me. Let's sell those leads to law firms so they have a tangible return opposed to a video or a website where they don't see the tangible benefit. And what disciplines, legal disciplines, do those law firms spend a lot of money, and they're buying leads. And who are they currently dealing with? Are they any good? And are they sort of resting on their laurels, or is it, ready for disruption? And basically MMA Digital in the summer of 2016 started again, and we launched our own brands. We built some technology on the Salesforce platform, and we became a lead generation business. And there was me and two other people.
I mean, it's an amazing story, right from the start. It's an amazing story. There's a few things I want to ask you then, based on what you've talked about. So you've made it sound so easy, right? And it wasn't. I know that. And you talked about drive and determination. And the first question I want to ask you really is when you're in that room with other high-performing salespeople. Let's talk about Yale, which was where you were.
Yeah.
What was it about you that gave you the edge, do you think, over those other people that were in the room to sort of succeed and, really become the top performer that you did?
I think I went in there sort of thinking I'm out of my depth. So I was the quietest person in the room thinking, crap, I've got myself this job.
Yep.
Am I actually capable? So then I had the fear.
Imposter syndrome is what we've heard.
Imposter syndrome, the fear of failure. The opportunity was so big for me, in my life. I was like, I have to do whatever it takes because, people like me with my background just do not get these opportunities. I cannot fuck this up.
Yep.
I cannot fuck this up. This is it. This is the sort of game changer in my life, and making sure that I can look after my family and friends as well. So it meant everything to me, and that meant that I would do whatever it took, and I think some of the other people, they didn't last that long. I think they went in there with quite arrogant, we've performed really well for a number of years. It was a completely different league. It was like so challenging, so difficult, and a lot of people just didn't last. And I would just, as I say, I was always the first one there, the last one out. I would do more meetings than everybody else. My discipline and resilience and determination and fear of losing that job and that opportunity just meant that, I never felt secure.
Yep.
I always I've got to keep going because the rug could get pulled from under me. And I think partly that was from, and I think, my partner talks about this because when I was young, when you're in and out of foster homes, you don't have that stability. And I think always thinking, shit, this could be taken away from me, just drove me really, really hard. So I would say that was probably the thing that I had that no one else had, because no one else had been through what I'd been through, because it was, quite a unique experience in my life compared to anybody else.
But quite a high level of self-belief as well. Did you or not?
Not at that time.
No,
not at that time. I would say it's only in the last few years where, I'd probably actually say in the last couple of years, where people have then backed me through private equity, where you get that, do you know what, actually I'm all right at this. If people are backing me, we're going through all this due diligence and they're actually seeing something in me, you know what, it's not been pure fluke. Because I thought, the first job selling nail varnish, the yellow pages, I've I've chanced it a bit here. But I think now I'm like, do you know what, actually over a 20-25 year period, you've been a consistent high performer, and having that stamp of approval with private equity houses go, no, we back you, it's sort of given me that self-belief. But before then, I would say the fear of failure, the fear of losing everything, because my background, not having that sort of, that family really from an early age.
Very interesting. And something else I'm interested in as well is obviously a lot of this was selling. And even when you founded your first, MMA Digital and My Marketing Aid, the success is built on an ability to sell. And clearly you could do that right from the start when you were selling nail varnish and working for Yale, and then selling. You sold to me as well, of course.
Convinced you as well.
I remember you did. and I'm thinking, how did he do that?
And actually, didn't you get a promotion on the back of our video?
Might have,
you got a round of applause.
I did a round of applause. Do you know what's really interesting is I remember meeting you and thinking, you sold it to me. And obviously I was working in an industry where you were hit the nail on the head. It was moving out of a traditional world, moving into websites, social media. This was 12 years ago, something like that. So what I'm really interested in then to understand is you're obviously a top salesman, and you then became a founder and assumed that role of selling your own business as well. So I suppose one question is, what are for anyone salespeople out there, what are your top tips, I suppose? And my other one is, for anyone who is a founder or a business director listening to this, clearly selling is part of your job and is part of your role. And so what advice would you have for founders and directors who might be listening to this and maybe find selling uncomfortable?
Yeah, so I think if you're somebody starting off in sales, I mean, for me, whatever people think of, double glazing salespeople, when someone's slamming doors in your face, and you've got to knock on the next door, and knock on the next door, and knock on the next door, and you only earn any money when you can get someone to buy some double glazing, there's nothing tougher. And what that gives you, as I say, and I've used the word several times, that resilience. So I think having something that's really difficult is the foundation, really, in that kind of environment. And then for me, having the professional training at Yale, and they invested a huge amount, then gave me the sort of the psychology of selling, the systems, the consultancy sell, the pitches. That was really powerful. In terms of a business owner, so I'm an investor now, as well as running Blume. And for me personally, I think a founder of a business has to be able to sell. It has to be able to sell, because not only are you selling your products and services, but also, I'm looking at Anne in the corner there. I have to sell to Anne, this is why you should join Blume. When I had a business with no office and I'm trying to convince people to join, when I had a business with 3 people in a shitty business centre trying to sell the dream of where I'm trying to take it, you've got to be able to sell at all levels. Private equity, you've got to be able to sell. So personally, if I'm investing in a company, I have to see sales ability, because they have to recruit people, retain people, sell to their products and services, sell to investors, suppliers, and I would rather back somebody that's got really strong sales ability and then build a team around them who can do HR, finance, marketing, and everything else. I think that's a really key skill.
That's a very, very good answer. I'm also interested then, you talked about how MMA Digital pivoted from being a digital agency to bringing in the leads yourself. Now, what was the thought process around that? Because there might be businesses listening to this, might be struggling, or growth might have slowed down, whatever it might be. I'm interested to understand from your perspective, who pivoted and came out the other side, what the thought process was, and how you went about it.
Yeah, and I think it came about because over a 5-year period, MMA Digital became successful in the sector that it was in, but it wasn't fulfilling my dreams and goals. And I had to sort of look myself in the mirror and say, am I going to carry on doing this at the same pace, running around the country, doing exactly the same thing? And actually the scalability of this, if I can get it to 2 million turnover and 400-500 grand profit, which is great, any businesses at that scale, my dreams and ambitions were much bigger. And I had to just be honest with myself and go, this isn't going to do it. So what do? Do you just carry on because you just invested 5 years of your life and you've worked your absolute ass off, or do you take a risk? And actually I then went into research, competitor analysis, who do these law firms spend money with? I got under the bonnet of those people who are now my competitors. What are they good at? What aren't they good at? And can I do this better? Can I be ballsy enough? And how do I go about it? And what do I do to differentiate? And do I just go for it? And I took the risk. And I had a plan in place. It's all evolved, and we had to change because certain things worked, certain things didn't. But it was the ultimate. This isn't going to get me to where I want to be, and I need to do something about it. And actually, this is the opportunity. And I've done my homework, and I'm going to have to roll the dice and pivot and take all the risk again.
And it paid off, as I said. So I'm interested now to sort of come full circle, if you like, to come to now.
Yeah.
So you had MMA Digital, you had your websites, and then things really took off for you in the last, so 2017, last sort of 6 years, really. And I'll come on to it in a minute about, that was not an easy time, obviously, for the whole world in the last few years. But you are a success story. And obviously, you've had private equity backing, exited a few times yourself. Yeah. So I'd love to understand a bit more about that story and how Blume, evolved, how it came about, and where it is now.
So if I go back to my plan to start again with the lead generation company, so I built my own websites with different brands, and then I built a platform on the Salesforce system. And the theory was that we could scale the business and sell leads to hundreds and hundreds of law firms, and I could manage it with really low overheads with a small team because technology would do all the heavy lifting. So actually, I could scale it and make a load of money, generate a product, create a product and a service where law firms are getting more value for money, and I don't have the headache of big overheads and having a big team to manage. That was the theory. So when we went live and we started selling leads to law firms, the way that it worked is somebody would search on Google, go onto one of our websites, fill in the form. That form then would hit Salesforce. Salesforce then had a round robin system, would allocate that lead to a law firm around the UK. Law firm would then be notified. They would then log in, phone that client, try and get hold of them, capture them, qualify them, convert them, and process them. I thought, surely that will do it. That will completely set us apart, and I can just scale it from there. Little did I know that when a law firm got notified about a lead, they haven't got the front of house capability, desire, speed of response, fastest finger first in a really competitive market that we're generating the leads to. Open the platform, phone that customer 7 to 10 times to try and get hold of them, because you're dealing with consumers that are just running around. They just don't have that ability. So actually the first 2 years of that business were really difficult because I was losing customers, as in law firms, because they were saying the quality is really poor because the leads that I was sending were raw and not qualified because they were going directly from the website Google, to them. There was no qualification, and it just wasn't working. I was like winning a law firm. They give me a go because they trusted me. They liked the theory, the technology, but actually what they didn't have was that front of house qualification. And I had to change that. So then I had, I had to invest, and I had to I had to personally invest, and the business completely changed really, because I went from a raw lead model to a qualified lead model, and that didn't come easy because I had 2 failed attempts outsourcing the front of house lead qualification. So my sort of plan was, I need to turn this from a raw lead model to a qualified lead model, but I don't want to build a contact center, a call center to qualify those leads in house, because that just completely changes the business. I need to employ people, move offices. I've never built a call centre before. Where the bloody hell do I start there? So I'll just outsource it to people who know what they're doing and just pay them a monthly service fee. Both of those things failed miserably for a number of reasons. And again, my reputation took a hit. And my competitors are just trying to kill me off. Any opportunity, very aggressive. We work in a really competitive market. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to have to do this myself. And I had to then set up a business within a business. So now we have a contact centre. In fact, we've got multiple contact centres where all the leads that we generate are qualified by experts 7 days a week who are highly trained, working on really clever technology. They then, convert about 20% of the leads that we come into, 80% are then pushed to one side, which means law firms are getting qualified leads. So our product and offering now is really high end because we're doing all the front end qualification and lifting. And that has meant that customers, law firms have, retained, spent more, moved spend away from our competitors because, we're not perfect, we're always trying to get better, but compared to where we were, the model has just completely moved on, and that has led to, significant growth in revenue. We're now the biggest player in the market. We've made more, 2 acquisitions and, a team of 130 people recruiting all the time. So, yeah, it was having that, taking that risk again. So I think any founders, don't be afraid to pivot, and, if you're not achieving those dreams and ambitions, change, go for it, because it's paid off for me.
Well, the things I've picked up from what you've said are, don't be afraid to pivot and really niche down. And I think, that to me, we hit the whole point of this podcast when we set it out was things that you might find in a textbook, but the real life story, the real life case study. I'm looking at Ollie, our producer here. That's what we set out to do, and this is a real world story of people who, you read this stuff about find a niche, but you really did, and then you hear these stories about how to pivot. If it's not going the right way, and you did, and look at where you are now. So it's a brilliant story. So you, if you don't mind me talking about this, I'd like to have a quick chat about the private equity side of things, because private equity sometimes gets quite a negative rap, if you like. I think owner-managed businesses, as you were, it can be quite daunting to go to private equity. Some of them can feel that perhaps the culture and the tradition, and if it's a family business in particularly, that feel can be taken away by private equity. I'm interested to know what your experience was, how it came about, and how you found the whole process.
So I shit myself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the reality of it, and the way it came about, and the reason why I did it. So, Blume was growing, and I was sort of thinking, how do I get external investment into the business to accelerate that growth? So the way that it's going, it's probably going to take me 10 years to get to where I want to get to. Can I accelerate that? And it was getting to a point where I'm personally investing, but I didn't have enough capital to make acquisitions, attract the hires that I wanted to bring into the business, really scale the business up to the next stage. So my options were, bank debt, investors, private equity, and I tried bank debt. That was difficult. Tried personal investors. That was difficult. But one thing I did learn, I also spoke to quite a few corporate finance houses. This is going back to 2019. Yeah, 2019. While I'm sort of, again, you research and you're speaking to people who've got private equity, people who've got bank funding, other entrepreneurs. So I'm just, my partner always says you're like a sponge, you'll just absolutely absorb. You'll ask a load of questions, absorb it all. And what corporate finance were telling me was, if you want to get on the private equity route, your business has to meet a number of key metrics. And one of those is they're not even going to have a conversation with you unless your business is making over £1 million a year net profit. So that was a goal for me. I'm like, if these guys are even going to take me seriously, I need to get it over 1 million. And thankfully we've got it, we'd got it well over 1 million with, the ability, it was on track to do a hell of a lot more. So that sort of ticked that box. So then I instructed a corporate finance house, and then COVID kicked off. So instead of going out to meet these various private equity houses who have the teaser, some of them want to meet you, some of them don't. Interestingly, because the sectors we operate in, we're in consumer legal services, predominantly claims, and there's a lot of private equity houses out there. Most of them, as soon as they saw we're in the legal sector and claims, didn't even want to have a conversation with me.
Okay.
Didn't even want to give me the time of day. Some of them who did were quite dismissive and a little bit rude. But I didn't have the ability to go and see them face to face because we were in lockdown, so it was all done via Teams. But yeah, I mean, I think it came down to, we had a few people interested, we got a few offers, and I think what they really brought into, which goes back to my selling nail varnish, Yellow Pages days, is my passion. And I think they could just see something in me, and I had something, and these guys are dealing with people like me all the time, and they must see some like characteristics. And and I went for Rockpool. And coming back to, why did I shit myself? Well, I've never done it before. You're meeting people, and 95% of them are Oxford, Cambridge graduated. I sound as I sound. I don't talk like them. I don't look like them. I don't have their education. And it was really daunting because also they are financial engineers, and they can run rings around you. And I'm someone who's built something from nothing. So that was really daunting. But
you came through it again, though. You see, that's interesting to me because you talked about when you're in the room again, it's almost like elevated to another level. But talking about the yell, and there we are, I've got to do it.
Yeah.
And here you are, 15, 20 years later, almost in that same situation again, the same self-doubts, perhaps, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But something, your drive and determination got you through that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned about speaking to other founders. So I'm a member of a few business groups, and some really high-profile people in those business groups as well. And because of my age, not that I'm young anymore, but a lot of those leaders within those groups are a lot older than me, and they're sort of at the end of their careers, and they've made their money through like generation businesses, or that they've had various events. And actually, nearly everyone I spoke to that were my peers were like, don't go down the private equity route. And most of them hadn't even had a conversation with a private equity house, but they'd heard someone on the golf course saying they'd had a bad experience. So actually, if I'd taken the advice of the people that I've surrounded myself with in terms of those business peers, I wouldn't have gone down private equity. But actually for me, I was like, well, no, I'm not you. And you're at a different stage in your life. I need to grow this business, and I want to accelerate the growth. This is an opportunity. I'm going to explore it. I'm really nervous, shitting myself. But if I can find the right partner that believes in me, and they can believe in the vision of the business and the strategy, I need to do it.
Yeah.
I need to do it because I need to find a way of making acquisitions and doubling, trebling, quadrupling the size of the business. And the only way I'm going to do that is by getting a financial partner and somebody that can help me strategically on board as well.
Yeah, it strikes me as that, it was a good match for your private equity in a sense because, people talk about, do you go equity or debt? And then when you're talking about private equity, it strikes me that you're very much aligned with the goals. So whereas if you're taking debt, maybe from a bank, they might not be engaged in the business or aligned with where you're going with. But when you're going through the private equity route, whilst it's risky, obviously, and a bit daunting, you are aligned and you were driven. And I'm guessing the private equity guys at Rockpool are massively driven as well. So actually, it's a good match.
Yeah, and I would say out of all the people that I've met and I've met afterwards and going through that sort of process with my first round of private equity, why did I choose Rockpool? Well, it wasn't because they're called Rockpool. It was because of the partner that believed in me called Guy Ellis, who's become a personal friend. And I think everything in business comes down to relationships. And I would say the relationship that I built with him straight away, how he invested his time to understand me, my personal needs and requirements, the business needs and requirements before we'd even done the deal. And then during the due diligence process where it can get really fraught and you feel like, these guys are about to, take over, it's not going to be my business, the commercials, the legals, when lawyers get involved, it can get even more fraught. And you should be able to pick up the phone going, look, what's going on here, and having those frank conversations. And then once the deal's done, they're still the same. He's still the same person. So I would say, for me, I went on and I do this for my recruitment. It's my relationships. I go for my gut feel relationship. Am I going to be able to work with this person? You know, for Rockpool, it could have been for 3, 5, 10 years. I mean, it turned out to only be 12, 18 months because we've got another private equity house on board. But, you know, I think it says a lot when he's still like a personal friend now. And, and it's a relationship. It was a relationship because when you are a single founder of an organisation, it is your baby. You know, it means everything to you. You've put everything into it. You've risked everything. You've been through some really dark times to suddenly allow somebody else in. Yes, there's the capital, but that's a part of it. It's the sort of like, can I work with this individual in this business every single day? And when things aren't going well, are they going to be supportive? And are we going to be able to collaborate and get through it? And they're going to be in the trenches with me. And I had that all the way through. And as I say, thankfully, we never had, you know, those tough times with them, but I just know that they would be there.
And then there we are. You said it yourself. You then had another exit, sort of private equity event, only 18 months later.
Yeah.
So
it was less than that, actually. It was actually it was 10 months.
Was it
10 months? Yeah. I was just thinking about the time. It was 18 months working with Rockpool from the initial offer, DD, transaction, FCA approval.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was sort of end to end with them 18 months, and then from completion. From Rockpool to Sun Capital Partners, it was 10 months, which I'm told by the people who work in private equity, that's never happened before.
Okay.
Across the UK.
I've never heard of it.
Potentially even globally, so might be in the Guinness.
So what happened there, just so we can understand that and the listeners can understand, what happened in those 10 months? It just literally, the growth trajectory was so high that another partner said, actually, we fancy that.
No. Well, so basically what happened was, we had a plan in place. So Blume was making acquisitions in its core market to become the biggest player like we are now. Then we had a strategy in place to diversify and replicate the model through acquisition and organically in other sectors. So a plan was being executed where we were about to buy another business that sells leads in a completely different sector. I won't name who it is. And once that one was done, they would then buy up other people in that sector. And then ultimately, over time, we would be lead generation across multiple consumer sectors. And we were focusing on regulated markets. Mm-hmm. So the niche was regulated markets, lead generation, consumer legal services. And we got offers in with people. And basically what happened was one of the law firms that we work with called Fletcher Solicitors, who are a customer of Blume, they're owned by a private equity house called Sun Capital. Mm-hmm. And Fletcher's, as Blume, we do a lot of events, and we tend to look after our clients and take them out. And I took Fletcher's to an event. It was the Grand Prix at Silverstone, and actually it was the 12-month anniversary a couple of weeks ago. And we had a really good day out. And the group CEO, the CEO of Fletcher, said, "Look, what's your plans for your business?" And I said, "I'm looking to do another round of private equity in the next 12 months. We've got a diversification strategy in place where we will stick with legal and get bigger, but we're going to move into other sectors. I've got a £10 million turnover business in heads of terms. I've got someone that can help me lead the next round of private equity that can demonstrate to the larger PE house they can scale it again. I will then maybe step into a chairman type role." And anyway, he said, "That sounds absolutely amazing. You know, your business is great, your growth. You've obviously had one round of private equity already. You know, we love the work that you guys produce. We love you. Do you want to have a coffee with Sun Capital Partners?" And this was on the Sunday, and I said, "Well, yes, but only because I don't want to offend you. But if the tyre kicking, please don't waste my time, because we're literally about to buy another business, and I've put an offer out to someone who'd become the CEO of Blume and move us on to all the sectors, technology expert. The new PE house would buy into them, and as I say, I would take a bit of a step back." And I then had a conversation with Sun Capital, who said, "We absolutely love your business. Your growth is absolutely incredible." So that was the Sunday. I think I had a conversation on the Tuesday, and they put an offer in by the Friday.
I mean, it's an unbelievable story, Des. I mean, like you say, I've never heard of anything like that.
I don't think it's ever happened before.
No, I mean, it's crazy, but it's brilliant. And knowing the story, and I guess as you've shared with us today, like where it started. If you think, that's what I keep thinking of, where it started. When 5 or 6 years old, to be where you are now. I mean, reflecting on that yourself, what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel a sense of pride? Do you feel I don't know. I'm just really interested to understand that.
I think, and I'm not going to talk about this later, but I think, if I was to give any advice to any founder, is the thing for me, and when I speak to people who are quite elite in sport, and when you look at some, people a lot more successful than me around the world doing sport, music, business, have you heard of visualization techniques and vision boards? And I think for me, I've always had the ability to visualize where I want to be and what that would look like and how that experience would feel. So when things have been really tough, I've always had that vision and that visualization of, well, this is why you're doing it. And I think if I reflect back, what are the things that I am proud of? Well, to be able to go to my parents, look what I've done. I wouldn't have done this without you. What car do you want? What house do you want? What holiday do you want? They don't actually want any of those things because they are working class people, which is really frustrating. That's a separate subject. So I think achieving some of those things on my personal vision board at a time when my parents are still around has been really, really important. But yeah, I love holidays and experiences. I didn't go on a plane until I was like 19. So to be able to now go on holiday and have experiences and look after my friends and family. So I think, and then building a business with some really good people. When people get promoted, like, Anne's in the room, she's not been with us that long, had a major promotion already, deserves it, and others. I think that's really, really rewarding. And when you've created something from nothing, it's great. It's absolutely brilliant. Especially, I think, there'd be lots of other founders like me where, if you were to ask my teachers at school, they were like, he's going to amount to nothing.
Because we spoke to a guy, Stephen Summers, a few weeks ago, and that's pretty much what he was talking about in terms of, similar sort of story to you. Successful, was a musician actually, and then has done very well. Check it out, episode 4, if you're listening to this. But he had the same thing to say, which was his vision was what really pushed him on and sustained him, and what he wanted to achieve for his family, and what he wanted to achieve, for his kids. And it sounds like that's a common theme among successful entrepreneurs and business founders. I'm guessing for any founder, that's why you're doing it. Ultimately, is for your personal vision, I suppose. Yeah, that's really, really good. I'd like to talk a bit more about leadership, if that's okay, which is a bit more of a sort of generic subject, but we're hoping that, the people that listen to this are business leaders and business owners. So I'm going to ask you anyway. I don't care. I was about to ask you a tricky question. Are you a good leader, do you think? What makes a good leader, do you think?
Am I a good leader? I've never been given any sort of, when I was working at Yale, I managed myself. I never had any professional management leadership training. I've then invested in doing leadership training through Vistage and other things. I think one thing I'm probably good at, and that's probably because of my previous experience, is I'm willing to give people a chance, and I'm willing to promote people based on attitude. Obviously, they need to demonstrate capability, but for me, if people demonstrate the right attitude, and which is what happened with me when I got the Nail Varnish job and the Yellow Pages job, I think that attitude and passion, and if you can just see actually they've got something about them, and giving them a chance. So I think I've always been good at that, and thankfully when I look back, 9 times out of 10 I've been right. So I think that gut instinct has sort of developed over time, and to a point where, and again referring to Anne, I've offered jobs on in the first interview and probably shocked people because you just see it, and so I think I'm also good at, some founders want to control everything, and I've always been, my skill set is relationships, sales, digital marketing. I'm not an accountant, I've got no HR training, so the ability to sort of bring in people around you that are better than you, that have got expertise in those particular disciplines. As some founders can be control freaks and they don't let go, and I think you have to have people have autonomy and give them some headroom to develop, grow, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. And I'm not someone that's like, I have to be all over everything. I trust people, and I give them the opportunities, and then it's down to them to prove whether they're capable or not.
It's interesting because you've also talked a lot today about how you were a sponge. You absorbed information and you talked to people and you take what they'd got and you take from here and you take from there. Do you think that as a leader and as got to where you are now, do you think that has helped you to not almost be not arrogant? You're not arrogant at all, and I've known you for a long time, and you're definitely not. Do you feel that that's important trait is for you personally and for other founders and leaders?
I think it's a fine balance, actually, because when I was doing my first private equity deal, and really intense, and and as I say, it was really daunting, because you're about to let somebody into your business, and have I chosen the right person? These guys are a lot smarter than me, and actually that lack of confidence can go against you, because one thing I never said to myself as I'm going through it, well, yes, these are Oxford, Cambridge graduated, and they are financial geniuses, and they speak very different to you, but you've built something from nothing, and you've come from nothing. And I think not having that inside me probably at times might have put me off from going through, because so I would say, yes, don't be arrogant, but also in certain situations, and again, as I'm getting older, and I've got multiple deals under my belt now and everything else, your confidence builds, and I think it's your own confidence based on a long track record. So I would say, at a certain stage, if you've got a good track record, don't be afraid to be backing yourself and go, no, actually I can do this because I've done this consistently for a long period of time. But yeah, you can't, arrogant. I don't tolerate arrogant people. No. Yeah.
It's just so interesting doing. We've done a few of these podcasts now, and some of the themes are so similar. For these business owners who are successful. So, attitude over aptitude, something we spoke about on a recent podcast with another guest, Caroline, and also, we were talking about there's Money Penny's very successful business, based near us in Wrexham, and that's exactly what they say. They employ people based on attitude. Yeah. They can teach the aptitude, but they can't teach the attitude. So that's really interesting. You're talking about vision. That's something else. I
think just to add to that, what you were saying, that actually, and again, it's probably linked back to my background. But I will take people on if they haven't got your classic 5 A's. They've been to university. I mean, I'm not even wired that way. So certain organisations. Again, when I was going for my job at Yale and I was applying for other things, unless you'd got a degree, you couldn't even get an interview. So for me, again, it comes back to, if you had a tough start in life, sometimes that could be the best people to take on. And, and you run about other companies. I mean, you think of Timpson's and James Timpson, he literally goes into prisons and he gives people jobs who have been in prison. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you've just mentioned a very well-known business leader there. Are there any business leaders that you have looked up to, throughout your career, or look up to now, would you say?
I think a part of the business groups that I'm involved in, there's multiple people across multiple sectors, which I do look up to, and they've been really generous with their time. And, we meet up on a regular basis. So, I'm a member of Vistage. There's some really strong leaders in there with some huge organisations. I look up to all of those guys, but we sort of debate, share challenges. And I've got to, I suppose, a point now where, they get a lot from me as well. So that's really rewarding. I think one thing I always do, I'm not one for reading lots of books, but I listen to lots of podcasts. So I'm always looking to listen to people that talk about visualization. And, he is in business, very successful businessman, but he's more famous for other stuff, but people like Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you look about his background, business, property, film, politics. So, yeah, I'm inspired by, lots of people, but I quite like the ones where, they've had a tough start and they've had a dream and a vision and then they've fulfilled it. And I like to unpick what kind of characteristics they've got. And, Yeah.
So you talk about Visted, which is the leadership development program that are you currently doing that? Have you completed it? Yeah, currently doing it. So how important do you think that is as a business leader? You're there, you've done it, Des. You might have further ambitions. I'm sure you do, knowing you, but you've reached that summit, if you like.
Yeah.
Do you still think it's important to keep learning and going on those programs?
Without a doubt. I mean, I've been a member of Vistage for a number of years, and I found that very valuable because businesses have similar challenges, and even they're in different sectors, just sharing those challenges with some people that might have been through it, and you can hopefully navigate the mistakes by speaking to someone that's already been there. So I think, definitely a leader should invest not only money but their time in being part of groups, but really good groups with the right people who have the right speakers. So I think that's really important. But when I did my first private equity deal, because I had that, I'm in a world I don't understand. The next thing I did, I signed up to become a member of Pep Talks, to surround myself with people that were working with private equity or the founders, because coming back to being a sponge, I'm in a world I don't know. Let me speak to people who have been in this world for a while. So again, I can navigate some of the sort of challenges that might be ahead. So without a doubt, it does surprise me actually where you get founders that are just in the business and they're not investing time in themselves, because they can't be a better leader and a better, entrepreneur unless they're investing in themselves, because you've got nothing else to then give to the business. And I think it's absolutely critical. I think that investment is it's not fair on the people if that leader isn't looking at ways of improving themselves, because the people aren't going to develop further and the business won't develop further potentially.
So have you ever had a business coach or a mentor?
Yeah.
What role do you see those playing for you and in business?
I still do. So I have a business coach. I also have coaches where some of the things are relatable. So for example, I train in Muay Thai, Thai boxing, and Grandmaster Sken, in his 60s now, brought Muay Thai to the UK, and a lot of the strategy around Muay Thai, the discipline, the training, the techniques, bizarrely, some of it's so transferable to business. And then speaking to him about some of his challenges as somebody who's Thai moving to the UK in the 60s, 70s, and how he had £70 in his pocket and he's gone on to build a worldwide academy of Muay Thai fighters, and he's like Grandmaster of the world, is really inspiring. So so there's the things that aren't directly linked to business but actually still really inspiring, and some of those things are really transferable. And I think it's really important, I think, for business coach but personal coaches as well.
I absolutely love that, and it's it leads us onto a topic talking about your fitness is really important to you, and well-being, and I guess mental health and all of that side of things too. So what role does that play at Blume? What role does that play for you in business, that side of things?
Yeah, I think it gives me, so exercise, when I've had my darkest times, I've turned to exercise to give me clarity. And, I've had those moments where I'm not sleeping and waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I've gone out running, and just having that time to think, decompress, clarity to then move forward, it has been absolutely vital. And, I think having an environment where you encourage healthy eating, exercise is really key. But I think as a leader, you do have a responsibility where people are looking up to you. And for me personally, I've now got a responsibility. There's people in this business who have got, they've had a tough start in life, people from different ethnic backgrounds. And, you've got to, I've got to inspire people as well. And I don't feel I can be inspiring people if I'm not in my best condition physically, mentally. So, I think being a leader, you've got to think about who's around you and your behaviours. And, I want someone, who's 19, 20 to think, actually, I can be like Dez one day. And there's no reason why they can't, because I've proven it. So I think, there is that sort of level of responsibility. And it's, as I say, it's your physical, mental health, and also how you conduct yourself in and outside of a business as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely key, I think, from the conversations I've had with other business leaders, and I suppose just from my own perspective, business owners and leaders, they set the tone. I think sometimes business owners maybe don't realise that their employees see the way they are, and they follow them, and so everything you do sort of sets, like I said, it sets the tone for everyone else to follow in the business. And it sounds like your values and culture are play an important part here at Blume. So could you talk to me a little bit about what you're trying to build here in that sense, and behaviours and that sort of side of things?
Yeah, I think we've got a very inclusive, diverse workforce from, everybody from everywhere. And I love that. I love walking into the business and there's people from everywhere. And, we are a business that gives people opportunities based on attitude and not necessarily qualifications. I think we're quite vibrant as well. And, there's never been like, you've got to turn up in a shirt and trousers or anything like that. But in terms of, I want it to continue to scale. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be making more acquisitions. We've got multiple offices now. I want us to be investing more in technology. I want us to keep being disruptive. So I think of 6 years ago when I was out there, this is why we're different. Go with us. We're a disruptive business. It's all right saying it, it's doing it, and now we've got capital behind us. We've got a technology team. We've never had a technology team. We've got R&D. We can afford to invest in projects, and some of them we can afford for them to fail. And that's the only way that you go on, and we can step up to the next stage. So, but yeah, I think career progression as well. We sort of, when we're inducting new people, and some of the, we have a learning development team now, and they talk about when they joined, which was only a few years ago, some of them, and how they've had multiple promotions. And it's brilliant because it comes back to inspiring people. And as I say, for me, it's those, a guy shook my hand outside. He's been with the business 2 weeks, and he's like, this is great. I'm absolutely loving the training. And I'm saying to him, look, there's real opportunity. I'm not just saying it. Speak to some of the people, and I think it comes to, they need to shoot for the stars, really.
And you're inspiring them, you hope, by your story. How much of your story do your employees know about?
I don't think end to end, because I've only got comfortable personally talking about it in the last sort of like 18 months, 2 years. It's took time for me to sort of go, do you know what, I can actually talk about this now. And I think some of that is because I felt like I've not achieved enough to even be able to share my story. So I think now I feel like, do you know what, you have got a story to tell, you can share it. And, people can't say, who do they think he is? Because, I've gone on to do something that's doing quite well. So I think, it's that time really, because I've now got a bit of a platform, and I think I need to use the platform because there'll be other people, going through tough times as well. And I think again it comes back to I've got a bit of responsibility to sort of help some of those people as well.
So I suppose we're nearing the end of our conversation. It's been absolutely fascinating, and it's gone to places I didn't expect. So thanks so much. I'd like to sort of, just before we finish, talk a bit more about your new business that you've just invested in, because as you say, the tables have turned slightly now. Dez Derry is now
the dragon.
That's what I'm saying. So which is really interesting. So again, the story's sort of gone full circle. Could you tell me about, firstly about Travel Scene, what the business is and why you chose to invest in that business?
Yeah, so before I go into that, I suppose I'll come back to the sort of vision and vision board. So I've now got new things on the vision board and new goals. So the way that I sort of see my life panning out now, what I want to be doing, I've got Blume, which is, medium to large organisation, now part of a much larger group, and with a very large private equity house. And that business is just going to grow and grow and grow. And it's, professionalised, lots of technology, and ultimately it's going to become quite corporate over time. It's going to have to, for the size and scale that we've got. So I've got Blume, which is, the founder of Blume, the CEO of Blume. But then I also wanted, because fortunately I'm in a position now where I can pick and choose what I want to do. So I wanted a passion project, and now I wanted a purpose-led project. So my passion is travel and experiences, and the opportunity came about to invest in Travel Scene, partner up with Jen Atkinson, who's got a track record building a luxury travel business that surpassed 100 million turnover. It's already got some private equity behind it and a couple of other high net worth private investors, and it's absolutely fun. Who doesn't love talking about travel and experiences? And it's an early stage business where my experience with setting up and pivoting businesses, customer acquisition, which is what Blume does, and actually small things. So Jen also lives in Didsbury like I do, and Travel Scene is now based in where Blume were based 3 years ago.
Wow, I didn't
so
know
it's
that.
so it's just like the whole thing is coming round full circle. But yeah, very ambitious. I mean, Jen, you've had a podcast with Jen, or an extremely driven, talented individual, and that business is going to scale rapidly. With acquisitions, we've got a number in the pipeline organically, and it's just really exciting. But at the moment, as I say, it's that early stage where I was, 3-4 years ago, where I can add a lot of value. But I'm doing it because I'm really passionate about it, and I really believe in Jen. So coming back to backing people, as soon as I met her, I'm like, how big do you want the check to be?
Okay. Yeah,
this, you've got the track record, and you could just see it in her. And and as I say, that's my passion project. And then my purpose-led project. So people talk about purpose and giving back and all the rest of it, and I felt that I didn't just want to do something for the sake of doing it, and then someone says, gives you a pat on the back, well done, you sort of giving something back, and it didn't mean anything to me. So I've got something that I'm going to be announcing in the coming weeks, which is supporting people from underprivileged backgrounds, from ethnic minority communities, not just ethnic minority communities, but underprivileged backgrounds, who are in combat sports while training Muay Thai, and it's their way out of difficult situations they might be involved in personally, because they haven't got necessarily the qualifications or the family support, or the academic ability necessary to get out, and they see combat sports as a way out, but there is no funding in it, there is no money. So a lot of these people are living hand to mouth until they get picked up by the big boxing or combat sport promoters, which is very few, and a lot of people don't realise. So watch this space. There's going to be a technology platform where those up and coming people in combat sports who are looking to change their lives, and that's their only way out. They work really hard, they're really talented, can monetize some of their social media following using some clever technology. So I'm looking to invest and help guide a few other people that I've known for a number of years who are also in that combat sports world. So that's my purpose. Yeah.
Brilliant. It has been everything I hoped it would be, this conversation, Des, if I'm honest with you. It's been so good to, as I said right from the start, to see where you started, and I didn't expect to go that far back. So, thank you so much for being so honest and clear with us and sharing your story. And I appreciate you said it wasn't easy and you've only just sort of come to terms with it. But it's so interesting to me how our early life experiences shape us and mold us more than we think. And clearly your early life experience shaped you in a dramatic way, and look where you are now. Before we wrap up then, we ask every single director or person that we interview on this podcast to share, it's the title of the podcast, their uncommon sense. I was wondering if there's anything that you've got that you'd share with our listeners and viewers that might be sort of a bit different from what they might read in a textbook. You said you don't read that much yourself. Is there anything you would share that would be sort of your uncommon sense for business owners?
I think the whole, and it's probably underestimated, but visualization. And I think the power of visualization, just physically seeing it, because the force that it can create to achieve it is like untouchable. And I would advise, don't just take my word for it. When you sort of get under the skin of the likes of Lewis Hamilton, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, leading tennis players, musicians, business people, there is a common trend where they talk about visualization. And for me, not saying I'm any Lewis Hamilton or anyone like that, but it's definitely worked for me without a doubt. So I would say, if you're a business owner, founder, director, do some research about visualization and create a vision board, because I don't know how, but the way it can just make you get back on track no matter what goes on in your life has been really powerful. And the drive that it seems to be able to generate when you can visually see what that would feel like. And on that vision board, it could be that holiday, doing something for your family, paying off your mortgage, driving your dream car, giving something back, meeting your partner, whatever it could be, whatever it is. I just think having that as a reference point on your phone, every day, has been really powerful for me personally.
Such a fantastic answer, Des. And I suppose when I first met you 12, 13 years ago, as you talked about right at the start, we talk about vision and the future. It was clear to me when I met you 13 years ago that Dez Derry.
Not changed in 13
have I not?
years.
No,
You're
I've not
exactly
aged
the
either.
same.
I still don't shave, by the way.
Looks like you, Grant.
Thank you. But 13 years ago when we first met, it was clear to me that even then, Dez Derry was destined for big things. I mean, I bought into you then through the company I was working for, but it doesn't come as any surprise to me that you have, ended up where you are, the success that you've achieved. It wasn't easy, and you came from a difficult background, but your drive and determination it's really inspiring, and I hope that people who've listened to this and watched this will be inspired by you. It's a pleasure to have spoken to you, and thanks for joining us on Uncommon Sense.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Pleasure.